Right. So we all know that to build any software, we need to follow an approach, right? And that approach we are named as SDLC, Software Development Life Cycle. So it is nothing but a framework or a process to develop a project or an application from idea to physical form. Okay. So here you'll be having lots of changes like developing the application or maintaining itself, or doing the changes or even enhancing that application. Okay. So everything will be happen in the SDLC process. So under SDLC, there are few methodologies. We already know them, such as sequential, agile, evolutionary, and iterative, right? And these methodologies are nothing but a kind of rule books where you have some rules that you need to follow. Okay. And under methodologies, you'll be having some models. So such as waterfall, scrum, kanban, xp, and rup, spiral, v model. Okay. So let's say let's take this sequential methodology. So sequential methodology, we have waterfall and v model under sequential methodology. So these models are used to develop the application by taking the rules from the methodology. So whenever someone say how waterfall model works, we will say it will work in linear approach, right? Linear approach, only one stage should be done at a time, and after that, one stage has completed successfully, then we will move to next stage. So where does this rule come from? So this rule actually been stated under sequential methodology. So it is a waterfall like structure, right? So in the same way, the Scrum, which is an model from agile methodology, takes some inputs or the some rules stated that the project should be done in a iterative and implementation. Okay, so you will keep on having a like a kind of fixed timing, and for that fixed timing you will be creating some new thing. So at the end of the project, all these small things will be stacked together, and it will be our final product. Okay, we will discuss clearly once the slide is changed. Okay, right. So Scrum is a framework for a project management that emphasizes teamwork, accountability, and iterative progress towards a well-defined goal. So as I said earlier, Scrum is a kind of framework or a model that comes under Agile methodology. Okay, so Agile do have lots of models. Uh, Again, apart from Scrum, we have Kanban and XP, but most of the cases in real world, mostly we are looking at waterfall and Scrum. Okay, so Scrum is more flexible to work with longer projects or a kind of project that required frequent changes, and waterfall used to work with a rigid project where no much changes can be happen in that, then you can go for waterfall model. Okay, so depend upon the behavior of the project, we will select our model, right? So now we will discuss how the sprint or how the scrum actually like gonna work, and what we have to know about that scrum to create this user stories or to work with Jira. Okay. So if you observe carefully, let me, yeah. So this image can entirely like give the details about the scrum. So we will see, follow my cursor. So here you'll be having uh, our product owner, right? He is the product owner. He will be taking inputs from the stakeholders or the customer or the client, whoever it might be for that project. Okay. So once he taken that inputs from the client, he will be noting down as an user stories. Okay, features, and we have lots of features, right? So before that, what happens means in the real world, there is a product vision document. Okay, I think everyone know product vision, right? So product vision will be created by the our product owner himself by taking the inputs from the client. So whatever clients want to achieve his product. So let's say I want a e-commerce website, and I will tell everything that how a website want to look like. So based on my inputs, product owner will create this product vision, and we will be clients and remaining team of the Scrum will be discussed and try to create user stories in a user story workshop. Okay. So in that workshop, user stories will be created. And there itself, we will be giving business value, complexity value, and acceptance criteria for that user stories. So we will, let's have a small, uh, like findings of how BV and CP works and what are they. Okay. So BV and CP, these are the values that given to the user stories so that we can filter out or prioritize them as we required. Okay. So BV is for business value, which means this the value determines how important that user story for the business. Okay. So let's say you are developing an e-commerce website and you want to add a catalog, product catalog. Okay. So for the e-commerce website, product catalog is like a heart of the application because if you develop everything and there is no products to choose, no one will care about the product, right? So might give BV value such as 500 for that thing. Okay. And coming to CP value, complexity point, it will be given by the developers. Okay. So the Scrum technical team will give the CP value for that. So another name for CP is story points, where these points will identify how complex that user story to implement in the project. Okay. So if a user story has 8 or 13 number, it means it is a bit difficult to implement on the project. Okay. And how these values actually or like how do we know which value to give? Okay. So for that there is a technique for BV which is called currency value or a currency note value, where the values can be the real uh, the values that we are using in the real world, the currency note that we are using in the real world can be translated as a BV value. Okay, so right now in India, we have 10 rupees, 20 rupees note, 50 rupees, 100, 200, and 500, right? So these are the currency notes that we are having right now. So these notes will be represented as a BV value in this Scrum. So higher the value, higher the importance of the user story. And remember, there shouldn't be any in between numbers like 250, 75, or 150 and all. Okay. And just a minute. Okay. Can you see the screen? Okay, right. So yeah, the BV values, right? We are talking about. So you shouldn't give values in between the currency values. Okay. So only the existing currency note should be translated as BV value. And coming to CP values, there is a number series called Fibonacci series where we are giving to the CP value. So Fibonacci series will be started as 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 24 and so on. Okay. So these numbers will be um, happens by adding previous two numbers. Okay. So let's say if I said 112, it means 1 plus 1 is 2 and 2 plus 1 will be 3 and 3 plus 2 will be 5. So in this manner, by adding previous two numbers, you will get your next number. The reason why we are choosing Fibonacci series out of all the series we are having as natural numbers, whole numbers, or rational numbers, why we're still going with Fibonacci series, because even the with the lower numbers or the small amount of numbers, you can achieve higher value. Okay, let's say if you take four numbers in the sequence of Fibonacci series, you will get one, one, two, three, right? Value is three. In the same manner, if you go for five digit number, five value, like a five series in the number, it will be like 13. Okay. But if you go with any other numbers, the fifth position will always be five. So the reason why you're choosing is that with the lower numbers, we will get higher value so that we can give the complexity value easily with lower numbers. And the difference also, if you see 5 and 6 in the natural numbers, there is no much difference between those two. So people who are looking into those two user stories will think like, doesn't have much complex between those two things. But in Fibonacci series, between two numbers, there is a larger difference. So if you have 8 and 13, so the 13th user story can seem as higher complexity. So people won't assume that it is not that simple. It is not like as simple as user story with the value of 8. Okay. So that's the reason we are going for Fibonacci series. And once the BV and CP values has been done, okay, those and we forgot about acceptance criteria, right? So acceptance criteria will be written by the product owner, okay, and in the like with the help of all the clients and the business analyst and the other team members, by having their inputs together, we will be drafting. The product owner will be drafting the acceptance criteria. So this acceptance criteria is nothing but a kind of conditions that hold that user story will become true. Okay. Let's say you want to design a login page for e-commerce website. Okay. You write user story, I want a login page, but and the acceptance criteria for that user story will be you should have email input and password input and submit button and validation should be happen backend. So these are the conditions proving that this user story will actually function properly if we implement that. Okay. And there is a format to write user stories. Okay. So format is as a role and I want to achieve and so that I can have. Okay. So if I give an example, as a customer, I want to log in into the application so that I can see my dashboard. Okay. So this is the format to write an user story. So in these three lines, we have three different things. First one is role. So in whom perspective we are writing that user story? Is it customer or admin or some other people? Okay, as a role, that role can be anything. And I want to benefit or achieve. So what he want to achieve for that user story? So I want to log in. So his need for that user story is to have a login uh, login part. Okay. And finally we have so that I can achieve. So that means so once this implementation is done, what he will be getting from it. So that is so that I can achieve. Okay. So in this format, you need to create your user stories, right? So once everything has been done for the user story, those user stories will be moved to the product catalog or sorry, product backlog. So you can see right in this image. So this is the product backlog. And once the user stories has been created, BVCP values have been given to them and acceptance criteria have been given to them, then all those things will be moved to product backlog. Okay. So now we have this sprint. Okay. The Scrum in the Scrum model, we'll be having a fixed duration to create a software, a piece of software. Okay, that duration is called sprint. So sprint is nothing but a time box period. It will be mostly 1 to 4 weeks. Okay, by default, most people or most organizations choose 2 weeks of time. So once the sprint is created, so you will be moving some items to the various places and you'll be creating those or doing those items and having some workable product. Okay. So before that, let's have the ceremonies that we have in the Scrum. Okay. So we will be having sprint planning, daily stand-up meeting, sprint review, and sprint retrospective meeting. So all these four meetings will be held in Scrum model. Okay. So once you define size of the sprint, so you can see that that I highlighted sprint equals to 2 weeks, right? So based on the size of the organization and size of the project, the sprint might be changes. Once you have created the sprint with the time, now the first step or the first ceremony or the meeting will be sprint planning meeting. Okay. So this will happen sprint planning meeting. Here what happens is that both product owner and team come together and decide what user stories should be moved from product backlog to sprint backlog. Okay. So to start the sprint, they need something to work on, right? So that will be happening in the sprint planning meeting. So once I decide and everyone is agreed, Then they will move product backlog items to the sprint backlog items. Okay. And here, what items to be worked on will be decided by the product owner, not the scrum master. Okay. So because product owner is the one who will be contacting with the clients, and based on their inputs, he will or they will decide what item they should be worked on. And based on product owner inputs, team will pick those user stories from product backlog to sprint backlog. Okay. So once the sprint planning meeting has been done, you will be having a sprint backlog with the items that you need to work with. Okay. And now you will start working on those items. So in the sequence or iterative manner, you will work 2 weeks to done these meeting. Sorry, to done these items. Okay. So inside these 2 weeks, you will be having few meetings called daily stand-up meeting. So this daily stand-up meeting is like happened every day. At least 15 minutes of time will be allocated for daily stand-up meeting. Here, developers or the people who working on the items will come together, and they will give their updates of the project. Like what is the work they done yesterday, what is the work they are going to do today, and is there any blockages while doing that work. So all these meetings will be facilitated by the Scrum Master. So if he find any blockages the team are having, he will be taking note of all those blockages and putting them in a impediment log. So I think uh, in prep 2, I think everyone has remembered about the impediment log, right? So this is where it happens. So all the impediments of the all the blockages will be noted in the impediment log, and he will be reviewing them and try to solve them so that team will work smoothly without any disturbances. Okay. So once that is done, in between these 2 weeks of time, all the things has been done, and there you have an option called product backlog refinement. Okay. So it may happen inside the sprint, or it may happen after the sprint. Okay. It's depend upon the urgency that you need to refine your product backlog. Okay. So product backlog refinement is nothing but, so in the product backlog, while creating user stories, you will be creating user stories for the entire project. Okay, it may be hundreds or 200 or 500 user stories in a single time will be in the product backlog. Okay, so why there is a need of refining those user stories? Because, so let's say you have created that user stories this month, this July month. Okay, and after two or four sprints, it will take like maybe 2 months, right? So maybe 2 months of time has been passed before right, 2 weeks or 2 months of time has been passed while you have created these backlog items. So at that time, the importance of these user stories may not be same as past compared to present. Okay, and also the some of the user stories may not be required at that time. After the in few days in the future, some of the requirements are may not that necessary to work with in this sprint. Okay, so in this way, product backlog refinement or product grooming or a backlog product grooming or product backlog refinement, these two things are the same. So they will be refining these product backlog items using some prioritization techniques. So we have Moscow, MVP, high BV, and low CP value. So these three techniques and much more, but mostly we will be looking into Moscow. Okay. So by using these prioritization techniques, they will be refining these items in the product backlog. So we know that Moscow is nothing but must, should, could, and would, right? So must are nothing but the user stories that must and should implement right now. Okay. And should are user stories that need to implement, but that is not that much important to work right away. And code is that we need the user stories, but it is not that urgency. But if you add them, it may look better. It will give a better uh, advantage for the application. Okay. And finally, wood is that these user stories are not that important or not that necessary right now. You may move it to the back of the product backlog. Okay. Or we have MVP also, minimum viable product. So MVP is nothing but creating a application of the project that having core functionality of that. Okay, so just by selecting the core functionality that needed for that application, we will be prioritizing our user stories. Okay, so these techniques will be used to refine your product backlog. So once that is done, 2 weeks has been completed, you will be left with potential potentially shippable product increment. Okay, so yeah, as I said earlier, in the iterative manner, you will be creating a chunks of software that is working properly. Okay, so this software will be presented to the stakeholder in the sprint review meeting. So here everyone come together and find out how this software is working, and they will gather the feedback by the these stakeholders or the client. Okay, and finally we have a sprint retrospective meeting. So sprint retrospective meeting is nothing but a kind of reevaluation from team side. Okay, so in this meeting the participants will be only internal team. So here they will discuss about what went wrong and what went right. Okay. So they will find if there are any issues while working on the sprint, they will look into it and they will be documented or logged into a implement log. And these things will be like look into before you created another sprint. Okay, let's say at the sprint one, it will be our first sprint, right? We might not know how many you developers or tester need for that user stories to work with, right? So let's say you have picked 4 developers and 2 testers, and at the end of the sprint, you find out 4 developers are not very less to run a sprint, and you want to have 6 developers. So next time when you create a sprint planning meeting, you will see all the things that are like documented in the retrospective meeting. And next time you planned a sprint, no, we will rectify those issues not happen one more time. Okay, so this is sprint retrospective meeting. And yeah, there are two checklists that we made. Okay, there is a DOR and DOD. DOR definition of ready and DOD definition of done. Let's see where these checklists will be used. Okay, definition of ready. So in a sprint planning meeting, you need to choose some product, these items from product backlog to sprint backlog, right? So while you are doing that, we have a DOR, definition of ready, a checklist, a kind of audit. Use it to verify whether that user story is ready to move from product backlog to sprint backlog. Okay, so this checklist might be like, does BB and CP value as given, or acceptance criteria has been created well, or the whether the user story understandable. So some kinds of technical conditions can be given in the DOR based on the team. And if any one of the condition is not satisfied for that user story, we will not move them from product backlog to sprint backlog. So that is definition of ready. And definition of done. So definition of done will be used before sprint review. So here, once you get your potential shippable product, you will have another checklist called definition of done, where you will gather all the checklist that you need to assess whether the product is ready to show to the stakeholder. So we need to check 1 or 2 times, right, before we can provide it to the client, so that we will get absolute confirmation whether the product is working or not, right? So definition of done is a kind of checklist used before the sprint review to find out whether the product is okay to move for sprint review meeting. Okay, so this is how a scrum will work, team. Okay, so let me zoom out a bit. Okay, and this PPT available in the portal itself if you want to look once again. Okay, right. So this is how the entire scrum happens. So these 2 weeks will be keep on repeating until you're done with your project. Okay, so meetings will be same. Every the approach of the scrum will be remain same without any changes. But maybe in the some organization, the values that we're giving like BBCP, DOR and DB and the daily stand-up meeting may change according to their interest. Okay, maybe some organization held the daily stand-up meeting in morning, in the day. Some might be held in the evening of the day. And complexity value, we are discussing the as Fibonacci series, right? So some people might give t-shirt size like S, X, XL, double XL, triple XL. Okay. And some organization might have DO and DOD differently or a single document. Okay, so it's up to the organization how they want to approach the project, right? Does everyone understand how Scrum work? So based on this only, we will going to work in our Jira tool. Please give me confirmation whether everyone understand this Scrum model. Okay, you need explanation on Moscow, right? Right. So Moscow is nothing but a kind of prioritization technique to refine your product backlog, right? So Moscow, if you get the abbreviation for Moscow, it is must, should, could, and would. So based on these four or five terms, you will be assessing your items in the product backlog. Okay. So must means all the user stories that are must and should implement right away will be uh, grouped together under must. Okay. And next one is Moscow should, right? Yes, should will be these user stories should be implemented, and that it is not that urgent to implement right away. It can be happen in the next sprint also. Okay, so you will tag all the should user stories together, and you will place it away in the product backlog. And could are the user stories? It will be give advantage like having an additional AI interface or AI integration, some kind of thing that give advantage for the application but might not need for that right away. Okay, so you will group all those user stories under could tag. Okay, and finally would is that these user stories are not that much required, and you can even consider there as a lowest priority, and you can work with at the end of the stages. Okay, so you will tag them together there. And MVP, MVP, minimum viable product. So the minimum viable product is operates on building the core functionality of the application. So let me take an example of online food delivery app. Okay. So here the main functionality for the app have to achieve is that identify store location, show it to the user, get the order from the user, show to the store, and deal with the transaction and find the location of the user. So these are the only core functionalities that the app should have. So that when we build the app only with these core functionalities, that is called MVP. Okay. And apart from that, there might be other functionalities such as having a chat box with an AI integration, or having a notification that pop-ups every time the rider moves. So these kinds of extra things are can be achieved, but the right away the sprint have to work with core functionalities. So for that kind of approach, we will use MVP, right? And coming to Fibonacci calculation. Okay, right. So Fibonacci numbers, if you want to, you note it down, or if you type in Google, you will get that numbers. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 8 plus 13, 24. Okay. So you will get your numbers by adding previous two numbers. Okay. So these numbers are used to give the complexity value or story points. These numbers will show the how complex that user story to implement in the sprint. So it will be given by the developers because they are the one who are implementing these points, right? Sorry, who will be implementing these user stories. So they will know how that user story will complex, right? Any other doubts on this Scrum model? Team, confirm me any other doubts on this Scrum model. If not, we can move. Right. Okay. So one more time, let me explain MVP. See, the mm, let me take an example. Okay, right. Think of it like this way. Okay, if you want to build an bicycle. Okay, so the main functionality of the bicycle is that it should have a passenger and it should be able to ride that cycle. Okay, so you will only focus on the things that you need to work so that bicycle will run, or it achieve it a core functionality. So you will have the handles and tires together and the seat, and that's all. It is done. So the first thing you will focus is that bicycle should run, right? After that is done, then you will add extra things like adding lights or adding colors, paints, everything. The same way in your product backlog also, if you are working with orders, e-commerce website, or inventory management, something like that, you will focus what is this application core functionality on. So based on that core functionality, you will filter those user stories. Let's say you have 150 and 100 of them are uh, must and should, or the core functionality that application should perform. So you will move those 100 user stories upwards and remaining them downwards. And you will focus only on that 100 user stories so that product actually get it. The product actually have that layout or the functionality that we are looking for. After that, you will focus on the adding the other advantages so that it look much more cleaner. Okay. So it is a kind of MVP, sorry, kind of prioritization where you will prioritize your items. Yeah, recording can be find out in the COPD YouTube channel. So once the session is completed within 1 or 2 days, these recordings will be given. Okay. Right. So let's talk about Jira. So Jira is a bug tracking tool. Yeah, this file is available in the COPD portal itself. Okay. So under document section, at the end of this line, I think you will find Jira PPT. Right. So Jira is a bug tracking software created for implementing the practice of project management. Atlassian company produced Jira. Okay. So like previously we used to think Jira is to only track the bugs, but while the time changes, we are actually implement this Jira into project management. So not only bugs, we can create stories, issues, sorry, stories and epics, tasks, subtasks, and bugs. Okay. So this Jira will let us to create all these things. But actually, everything, every epic or every user story, every task you have created will be identified or called as a issue in the Jira. So if someone talking about issues in the Jira, it means it can be any one of it until you point out uh, like uh, like uh, until you point out particular which one you're talking about, everything will be treated as issue in the Jira. Okay. And let's see how you can have this Jira tool. So Jira is an open source. You can type Jira software download or you can access from the Chrome itself. So type Jira and select the first option. And if you want, you can download it or you can log into the Jira directly and you can try work with the Jira tool right away. Okay. So once the, let's see, yeah, that's all. So this is the theoretical explanation of this Scrum model and Jira. And once we are okay with all these things, and we can work on the Jira tool directly. Okay. Can I get the confirmation everything is okay for the theoretical part? Then we can move to the Jira tool. Yes. Okay. Right. Thank you. Okay. So you can search for Jira. Let me search Jira. So it will show you like Atlassian Jira project management. Look for these green ones. Okay. Or you can try Jira free sign. Go for first link if you want. Okay. So here it asking me to go to the Jira because I have multiple accounts in the Jira. That's why it's showing. Do you want to go to the Jira one more time? Okay. So let's create a new site. So this will be your navigation flow. So Jira tool will give you a free version to work with, and it will support 10 users in a single project. Okay. You don't need any credit card or subscription. So click on OK. So now it will ask us to select any one of the like models under Agile. So if you want to work with Kanban, Scrum, project management, which one you're talking, which one we are working with. So for now we are looking for Scrum, right? Select Scrum and click on continue. So it will take some time. So it's asking to give the name for project. Mm, we will go for e-commerce. Okay. E-commerce application. So it is asking us like, so the reason why we are only going for Scrum, not Kanban or the project management, because see, Agile is a methodology like a kind of tree, and you have branches like models. So this Scrum, Kanban, and XP, these are the models. Based on the approach of your project, you will choose these models. Okay. So Scrum is a time event where you will have fixed time that you need to like deliver the output. And Kanban is a kind of just drag and dropping the user stories from one board to another. So there is no time for Kanban. So most of the people use Scrum because you have a specific deadline to work with. So if you have a deadline, you will definitely work, right? You will have an output for the end of the deadline. So that's the reason we are going with Scrum. So if the organization want to go with Kanban or any other thing, you can work with it. No issues. Okay. So it will asking to select what type of work you do, task, incident, service request, anything. So let's now skip it. We are working with everything, right? How do you track work? Yeah. Here it's showing us how do you track your work. So in the backlog, you will be seeing some boards, right? You can go back and you can select this scrum. No issues. Okay. As you can see, there is a backlog. Uh, sorry, there is a board, and you'll having the four columns. So the user stories will be moved from these four columns, such as to do, in progress, and resolved or done. Okay. So some of the companies or the organization may have multiple boards, such as like waiting for customer or waiting for QA team for testing, and resolved can be done straight. Okay. So based on the like the number of boards you want, you can have it. Okay. So click on finish. Cannot exceed, right? Let's say testing. Okay. Yeah, no worries. You will get this recording in the COPD YouTube channel within 2 or 3 days. Okay. Right. So track. So once you have, let me select, right. So once I created, you can see some of the board has been shifted as to do, in progress, testing, and done. And for example purpose, it has created some user stories, and that's why we are having these story points for that user story. Okay, we can remove these user stories, or we can work with them. in a minute. Okay, let me go back to backlog. Okay, sorry, my bad. I think I have logged into my previous project. So that's why we are having these crumbs, these issues. Okay. So yeah, once you log into the application, if you're going with the same user ID, all the instances you have created in Scrum will be available here. Okay. So it's kind of profiles. Okay. So you can see these are all the profiles that I have logged into as a uh, like employee to work on the Jira. Okay. So you can see all these things are my profiles and each one of them contains a project. Okay. So I think we accidentally logged into here. So let me check another free version of the profile where we don't have any project there. We check we have anything here. Right. We don't have, we can delete this project. Delete. Right. Let me refresh. Yes. Okay. Right. So I have logged into a profile where there is no project given to that profile. Okay. And for you, it will be no issues. You'll be having single profile, right? For now, you don't have any of those things. Okay. Right. So creating a profile, it won't take much time. Just give your details and click on select the Scrum and then click on OK. You will get into this profile page. Okay. So if you logged into one more time with a different names or a different these profile names, then you will have multiple profiles under same Jira tool. So be careful that while you are creating these profiles. Okay. And on the left side, you can see these are the dashboards that we are having. So if you click on for you, so it will show you the project you are working on and the tasks or the user stories that are assigned to me, starred user stories of the projects and board. Okay. So start is nothing but like a bookmark. If you have multiple user stories and you want to start few of them so that you can easily access them, you will start them. Okay. And assigned to me like if someone let's say I'm a Jira developer, sorry, I'm a developer in the project and the Scrum Master has been assigned few items to me, then those assigned values would be seen here. Okay. Let me close this thing. Right. So now let's create a project. Okay, let's start with project. Click on plus symbol under project section. So here it will ask a project template. So for which project or which template you want for your project. So we have custom template, software development, service management work. So even though if you selected a Kanban at the starting and you want to move it away, while creating the project, it will ask you one more time which model you want to work with. Then you can select this one. So no worries. Okay. And yeah, coming to software development, we are working on the software, right? So click on it. So once you do that, you have Kanban, Scrum, top level planning, and few other models that work on that software development. So let's have a look at Kanban. If you click on it, you'll have a kind of documentation how it works. So you can see and go through this documentation. So it kind of is dashboard or a what we can say this a kind of board that we stick our user stories where you will move these user stories along the boards based on the status of the user story. Okay, there is no fixed time for that. So if a part of the board has been emptied, then you will move next user stories to one. Okay, let me close it and let's go for Scrum. Okay. So here you will be having planning upcoming work in a backlog. So you'll be planning each and every step to create your product. So let me click on use template. So once you do that, it will ask you to select team managed or company managed. Okay. So go for company managed because under team managed, you will be having so many restrictions to work with Jira. A lot of options may not be available. So select company managed. Okay. And now it's asking for the project. Let's go for e-commerce shopping. Okay. So once I have given the name, a key will be created for that particular project. So this key is to identify which project or if you have multiple projects in a single profile, this key is used to identify what project we are working. Okay, rather than going the name of the project, it will be quickly findable using the key. Okay, and then one more time it will ask you to select like it will help like ask you to change the template or change the type. Okay, so we are good with these two things. Click on next. So let me type. Okay, so let's don't have any team members right away. So here, this page is nothing but if you are working on a project and you want to add few team members, you can type their email and send invite and continue. What happens is that they will get an email saying that we are inviting them to the project. And once they accept that, they can join in our project as a like next developer or the colleague. Okay. So for now, let's don't add any other person. Let's go skip. So once you skip and complete all those settings, you will be back to the interface. Okay. So here you can see for you recent start and everything is there, and you have ECSA board. So e-commerce shopping app has been shorted as ECA board. Okay. So previously the Jira have being to have all these options under left hand side, but right now they have shifted everything to here. Okay, so Jira will keep on updating team, so don't worry if you are unable to find out any of these options or the these features. Just like browse everything, you will find definitely these functionalities. Okay, so the app will keep on changing, but make sure that you know the default process, how to create user stories and how to work with them, right? So let's have a look about these features. Okay, so let's go for summary. So summary is kind of dashboard. Okay, so it is a kind of dashboard like what kind of works has been created and who distribution of the work and the prioritization of the user stories you have given. Okay, based on highest or high model. Here you can see those user stories once you have created them and assigned to the person. Okay, so for now, forget about summary. We are working with the backlog and activity sprints. Okay, and timeline is nothing but a kind of we can say time analysis series or the kind of chart where you can see which epic what is the time period of the epic to work with. Okay, so you can create your epics here and you can drag them across here. Okay, so before we even create epics and user stories, let's a small discussion about these things. Okay, so we have epic, user stories, task, subtask, bugs. Okay, in Jira we have these five things. Okay, so epics are nothing but those are large body of work that cannot be done in a single sprint. Okay, so when these large body of work or these epics can be breakdown or have relevant user stories under them. Okay, all the relevant user stories combined together, we have an epic. And these user stories can be divided again into tasks and subtasks. Okay, So user story is nothing but a piece of functionality or the requirement that we need to implement in the project. And coming to task is a kind of a like a small action that we need to do to complete it or to complete the user story. Okay. So tasks are very easy. It can be take hardly half day or 1 day to complete these tasks. Okay. And the hierarchy will be epic, user story, task, subtask. Okay. So yeah. And under report section, you'll be seeing the reports like burn down chart, burn up chart, sprint report, velocity chart, and everything. So we don't have any product burn down chart here because product burn down chart is only available on the premium version. Okay. So let's go for backlog. Okay. Let's create some epics. Okay. Let's have some epics and let's create some user stories under that epic and have a few tasks for that user stories and few bugs also. Okay. So to create epic, you can click on here, create option, or else you can press down the C option. Or sorry, the C key under your like in your keyboard. So if you press C, you will get this pop-up. Just click on got it. Let me drag it out. Just a minute, team. Let me enlarge it. Yeah. Now you can see. Right. So we are creating story. So here you can change the work type. So if you have epic, bug, story, and task, you can select any one of it. Based on that, you can say that thing we are creating. Okay. So right now we are creating epic. Okay. So here there is a status to do. So make it as a to do because still we are creating it, right? Once we are moving across the board, then we can change the status. Okay. And don't change anything here right away. We can change it in the further the process. Okay. So now summary. So summary, try to give the like meaningful summary because that particular AP will be seen by the summary only. Okay. So let's say this epic is about shopping cart. Okay. So about shopping cart here. Yeah. We are naming our epic as a shopping cart. And we don't have any parent because this epic is a parent. Under this we have user stories. Okay. And now you can have this description box. So team, we discussed about acceptance criteria, right? Where we are writing this acceptance criteria. So in this description box, you can create your acceptance criteria. Let's say acceptance criteria. Okay. And yeah, you can have just a minute. So you can have acceptance criteria for the epic and user stories at the same time, but epic will have larger user stories inside it, right? Sorry, so many user stories inside it, right? So basically, like by default, we don't give any acceptance criteria for the epic, but we will make sure that uh, this we will give a description of this epic such as this epic will take care of all the user stories relevant to the shopping experience. Okay. So kind of just a minute, relevance. Yeah. So under this epic, we will have user stories that are relevant to the shopping experience. Okay. And come back. You can give the priority of this epic. So medium, high, low, lowest. So let's leave it as high. And you can label it start date, due date, blocks, and assign. So here you'll be seeing just a minute. Yeah. here you can see assignee, right? So assignee is nothing but, so whom we are assigning this epic. If you type my name and or click on assign to me, this entire epic will be assigned to me or that person. Okay. So for now, we don't have any other person apart from me, right? So leave it as automatic and click on create. So once you do that, epic will be created. You will get a pop-up here. Created epic one, view epic or copy link. You can click on view epic to see the epic or close it. Here you have epic option, right? Click on it and then toggle this button. Now you can see your epic. Okay. So if you want to minimize this dashboard, left side dashboard, you can press your this bracket. We have in keyboard, right? Press your bracket, left bracket. Okay. So inside the epic, the summary was uh, like uh, let's just giving a description of why this epic has been created or what this epic will contain. Okay. So it is kind of like name for that epic saying that it will contain all the user stories relevant to that shopping experience or shopping cart. Okay. Okay. Right. And yeah, now you got your shopping cart. So if you enlarge it, you can see work items means nothing but user stories. What, how many user stories has been created and how many of them completed and what are the points are given to that user stories. All these things will be seen on this drop down. Okay. So now let's create few other epics. So for that, click on type C. You can click the C key or you can click on create epic. Okay. And then let's have another name. Okay. So this time let's have about okay order cancellation. And here same, we will write as a description like all the user stories, order cancellation will be grouped under this epic. Okay. Okay. And let's leave it everything and click on create. Okay. Right. In this manner, you can create multiple epics. Now, let's create user stories for that epic. Okay. So create user story, click on C, change this work type to story. Okay. So now let's have a summary of the name of the user story at the form. So let's say as a customer, I think I have this thing. So I can go to dashboard, right? Yeah. So now you can see, right, the summary is kind of format of the user story. So the format for this user story is like, as a customer, I want to log in so that I can go to dashboard, right? So in this manner, you need to create your user story. And now you have to assign this user story to any one of the epic. So let's say if you click on drop down, you will see your epics. So if I am selecting the epic one, then this user story will be included in that epic. And now your acceptance criteria will be come in this description part. Okay. And let's have this acceptance criteria such as there should be email and password field, credential validation would be happen, submit button will be triggered, triggered the validation. Okay. Okay. See, user story is nothing but the way we are creating our epic. You can change the work type epic to story. Once you do that, the one we are creating right now will become story, user story. Okay. So once you do that, the format of user story should be written under summary, and the acceptance criteria will be written in the description box. Okay. So these are the condition making sure that user story will work fine. And come down, let's create. Okay. So this user story has been created. So you can see that user story in under backlog. So you can see as a customer, I want to log in so that I can go to the dashboard, and you can see the shopping cart has been assigned, or this user story will comes under this shopping cart. Okay. Let me move it away, and you can see there is an option called story point and this medium and assign to, where we whom we have to assign. So if you select this one, it will open in a larger side, and let's move it away. Okay, let me resize it. You can see, right? So you can see that user story that I have created. If you click on it, it will open one more time, and it will show remaining details that you want to change. Okay. So you can see assign me, we didn't assign this user story to any person, and there is a label due date, start date, and parent is nothing but ESM. Okay. And you have more fields where you can give story points is none. You can give the story points right away, and components, sprint, fixed versions, team. So everything will be we didn't arrange those things. So that's why it will be none. Okay. So for now, let's give the story points. So for that, select this story point option. And remember, the story point should be under this Fibonacci series, right? So let's say we will give like 3 for this story point. Just select 3. So once you do that, you can see it story points has been the story points we have given will be reflected in this gray box. And the to do is nothing but all the story points that still have to work with will be seen in this gray box value. Okay. So let's create few story points. So sorry, let's create few user stories. For that, click on create. It will be easy here to create. And let's say as a customer, I want to see product catalog so that I can achieve, or so that I can place an order. Okay. And then let's create another user story. As a customer, I want to see cancellation option so that I can cancel my order. Okay. And then as a let's say this time we will have an admin. Okay. As an admin, I want to log in, log in into the application so that I can see the traffic of my application. Okay, so traffic is nothing but how many people are using that application. Okay, and as an admin, I want to have future futures assigning facility so that I can change the futures. Okay, and as a let's say as a rider or the as a delivery person, I need to log in so that I can deliver the product. Okay, so in this way you can create your user stories, and if you want to write your acceptance criteria user stories that are created in this way, select it. You will get your user story opened here, and here you will be having description, right? So here if you select it, you can create your acceptance criteria from here onwards. Okay, and yeah, now let's assign these user stories to the epics. Okay, you can select this epic and then select any one of these epic for that. Okay, and make sure these user stories should be relevant to this epic. You shouldn't like select all these user stories like randomly for that epic. Okay, these user stories should have that epic. And if you want to select any one of the user story for the like if you want to select multiple user stories to the single epic, you can check the boxes. So let's say 1, 2, 3, and then you can drag them and select the shopping cart. Okay, so once you do that, okay, just a minute, let me select no sell, and so dragging function will take some time. Let me unbox it and try to see if it works. Okay, it should have worked, but it seems it's not taking multiple user stories at the same time. Okay, fine. You can like click on that thing, this epic option, select that epic manually, and then let me select this one. Let me refresh the page. Yeah, now you can see that these things has been selected. Okay, and cancellation. Let me try to drag out and yeah, order cancellation as well. So you can drag them or else you can assign manually. Okay. So in the meantime, you are seeing that few of the epics are disappearing, right? So for it is happening because under epic drop down, any one of the epics has been selected. So if you select epic number 1, only user stories related to that epic will be seen. Okay, so that's the reason few of the epics are missing. If you select no epic and then yes, if you select only epic, then you can see all the user stories. Just a minute, team. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Tim. So if you select no epic and click on it, and now you can see there are no user stories because every user story in the backlog has been assigned to some epic. If any user story didn't have assigned to this epic, you can see those user stories here. So for now, we only have like 4 user stories, right? So like 6 user stories. That's the reason we can easily assign to this epic. But if you have multiple user stories like hundreds and 200s of them, then it will be easy to identify which user story has been not assigned to an epic. Okay, so let me like remove this thing and let me refresh once again. So sometimes being an open source, it will glitch sometimes. Yeah, now we have all these things. Okay, so now let's have a story points. So right now we have giving story points as we wish, but in general, like in this real world scenario, what happens is that team will come together and they will discuss like what story points should be assigned to that particular user story. So based upon the discussion and once they come to one number, then they will assign that number to that story point. Okay. So let's say we are giving to 5 for this, and this will be something as 3, and this will be 8. Okay. And this will be some 5, and let's have this one as 13. Okay. So it's up to you. For the example purpose, you can give the numbers accordingly. So now, as you can see that I have given all the user stories for this all the story points for these user stories. The sum of the story points can be seen here. So the total story points we have is 37. Okay. So if you done any one of the user story, those what the sum will be reduced and that story point will be moved to this green one. Okay. So if you complete any one of the user story worth of 5 story points, then the green box will be changed as a 5 because we have completed that story point. And blue is nothing but in progress. Okay. And now so we are done with creating epics. We have created our user stories. Now let's start the sprint. Okay. So sprint is as we said 2 weeks of time to work with the user stories, right? So to create sprint, you can click on create here. Okay. Or else you will have an option called create sprint here also. Okay. Once you click on create sprint, sprint 1 has been created. You can see, and all you need to do is that just drag and drop these user stories to the sprint 1. Okay. And here let me delete sprint 2 has been created. Delete this sprint. Okay. So let's say among all the 6, I want to move first 3 to the sprint 1. Okay. So I'm moving to this sprint 1. So now I have moved 3 user stories to the sprint 1. And means in single sprint, we have to complete these user stories. Okay. And let me edit this sprint. So now you can give the start date and date also, or the duration can be fixed based on the numbers we have suggested, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. Okay. So for the example purpose, let's take the hours as a sprint. So we can see our sprint burn down chart, and date can be same. Let's see. It's already 1 o'clock. Okay. Let's say 1 o'clock. Okay. Sprint goal. You can add the sprint goal, maybe like completing all the user stories without any bugs. Okay, maybe the sprint goal is that. Okay, and then click on update. So now this sprint with the time has been created, and you can see here the timing also. Okay. And now you can click on start sprint. Sprint will get started. So once you do that, you can review the dates we have given and then click on start. The end of, okay. So we need to give the different end date. So it's not taking the single day in a in a sprint. Okay. So let's create new one. Right. So once you started the sprint, you can see the board, right? So this is the board where we will move our user stories from uh, to do to in progress and then finally done. So to do is the list that we need to work with. And if you drag and drop them to the in progress, it means they are the team have been working on that in progress. Okay. Sorry, their team have been working on that user story. So that's why it is in progress. And you can move it from to do to in progress one more time. Okay. So after some time, if the team has been completed this user story, then they will move it to the done stage. Okay. So now you can see once I have moved them, the name of that user story has been crossed out. It means it is completed. Okay. So let's come back to backlog one more time. And let me refresh the page. So now you can see in to do there is three story points, or the user story worth of three story points has been still to work with, and five story points worth of work is in progress, and three story points of user story has been completed. Okay. So here also we can have a quick glance, like how many user stories has been completed. As you can see, the name has been striked out here also, right? And coming back to sprint again, let's move this in progress to done one more time, and coming back to in progress. Okay. So this Jira tool will allow us to move backward also. So you can move it back to in progress again. So, but it is a suggestion that shouldn't move any user stories in backward direction, because so once it is marked as a done, it means everything for that user story has been approved by the team members. And if you move them again to this in progress, it will disturb the timeline of the sprint. Okay. So that's the reason before you move anything from the in progress to done, it is better to look more than one to confirm whether it is done or not. Okay. So as I said earlier, you can have multiple boards together, right? So if you want to have another board, which is called inspection, you can have it. And then you can in after in progress, before you move into done, you can move it to the inspection, and the testing team or the QA team will look into it, and they will move it to the done. So to create another board, you can click on plus button, create column. So let's say inspection or the testing based upon you. So once you do that, you can see that inspection has been shifted to in between in progress to done. Okay. Now you can move to inspection, which means so we are the development part has been completed, and the testing team need to look into this user story. Once they do that, they can move into the done stage. Okay. So in the same manner, we can move this. Okay. And these boards also can be movable. If you select that board and move it up, you can move to in progress to the impact and out of this in progress. Okay. So it's up to you how you want to arrange these boards. So finally, let's close this. Right. So now you can see all the user stories has been moved from to do to done, which means this sprint has been completed. Okay. And then you can click on complete sprint. So once you do that, you'll get an pop-up saying that the sprint one has been completed, and it will ask you to create a retrospective for this sprint, finish it will make you to redirect to the Confluence. So we don't need this thing right away. And then click on complete sprint. Okay, right. So yeah, I will show you just a minute. Yeah. So here there is a plus option, right? So click on it to create a new column. So name it, name the column, and then the column will be appeared. Okay, right. So let's come back to backlog. Okay. So this backlog is nothing but kind of our product backlog. So here you will be having all the user stories. So once you create your sprint, then your sprint backlog will be created. You can see the sprint 2 has been started. Has been created. And now you can move these user stories there. Okay. So before we move these user stories, let's discuss few other things that we need to look into before we can start it. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. The question is that once the sprint is completed, can we undo the same, or can we open the sprint again? So in the real world, you cannot reopen the sprint if you find any issues in the completed sprint. Okay. So it will completely disturb the timeline of the project. So what you have to do is that if the sprint has completed and you find some of the issues in the completed sprint or the done state of the user stories, you will create the bugs related to or the tagging that particular user story, and you will move it to the backlog. And then in the next sprint, based on the urgency of that issue to be resolved, then you will move that bugs to the sprint. Okay. So in this way, you don't have to reopen the sprint, but you can resolve the issues in the completed sprint. Okay. Right. So yeah, you can see there are few other options that we need to look into. So let me select a user story. Okay. And I'm trying to enlarge it so that we can see. Let's see, open command. No, it opening command panel. Okay. Right. So just a minute. Hmm. So if you want to open this sprint into next tab, you can click on this sprint key, sorry, this user story is key, and then that particular user story will be opened up here. So here we can see clearly what we have to do or what changes we need to work. So as you can see, there is an user story has been created, and you can write the acceptance criteria here itself. Let's say acceptance criteria. Okay. And let's say we have option A, B, and C for the acceptance criteria. Okay. And now coming to right side, you can see there is an option called label. Okay. So if you select on it, it will be open to work with. And let me type as mm, user experience. I will show you why I am typing that experience. Okay. Right. So the reason why we are giving labels, because so we will be having multiple user stories under a epic, or we'll be having lots of user stories in a product backlog. These labels will help us to filter these user stories based on the things that we need to work on. Let's say you are having 100 user stories, and among them, let's say 20 user stories regarding the user experience functionalities, and remaining 20 are backend functionalities, and remaining 20 are, let's say, some AI integration functionalities. Okay. So by giving the labels to that user stories, you can filter them and look into clearly which of the user stories are related to user experience that we need to work on among all the 100 user stories. Okay. So basically labels are used to filter the user stories give by the labels given by us. Okay. And let me show you another thing here. So once you click on this plus icon, you can see create subtask also, right? Click on it. So now you can create a subtask under this uh, user story. Okay, so let's read this user story. So as an admin, I want to log into the application so that I can see the traffic of my application. Okay, so the the subtask can be like, it will be like create a new profile for admin login. Okay, and then click on enter, and you can add another subtask also, or let's say um, verify whether the credentials are valid or not before before allow allowing him to change the futures. Create. Okay. Yes. So these subtasks are nothing but, so a kind of breakdown of the user stories where while we are working on the user story, these tasks can be given to the other people so that they can work on this task simultaneously. Okay. And let me save them. Okay. And then coming back to our ECA board and then refresh. Okay. And let me close this. If I uncheck is, you can see that the subtask assigned to these user stories can be seen here. Okay. And now let's create a bug that is what we say regarding to the user story that we put in the sprint one. Okay. So I'm opening the create story option, click on bug. Okay. And give a summary so let's say the login, right? So login is not validating the credentials. Okay. And now you can assign the parent which uh, epic does this bug related to. So you can give that, and description priority, and finally you can select. Okay. So let me create this. Yeah. Now you can see the bug has been created, right? So in this way, if you have any issues in the completed sprint, you can create a separate bug for that thing, and they can work on this issue. Okay. And if you open this shopping cart, you can see the work items are 6, 2 are completed and estimated at 34 points. So all the items that are relevant to the shopping cart can be seen here. Okay. And coming to versions, you can see there is a version, right? So team, remember that if you are having hundreds and 200s of user stories, it might not the ideal case to release everything in a single version. Okay, so we will split the releasing dates accordingly based on the work we have done. Okay, so let's say version 1 is only for user experience part. So it means all the like before the version date comes, we will work entirely on the user experience user stories only. So after that, you release that version and see get the feedback, and then you will start work on the remaining next version that you have created. So for that to create, click on versions, open this one, and click on create version. So name of the version. So let's say we are our version should be related to user experience. Okay. So the start date and end date of this version will be, we need to deliver this version by the end of the month. Okay, and then click on save. So version has been created. Click on view version. Yeah, so once you click on view version, you can see the version has been created with the dates. Now you can add the work to it or the user stories that you need to complete in this version. Okay, so let me assign these values. Okay, let me come back here itself. Let's drag these user stories. Let me delete or change this epic, and let me create few user stories. For example purpose, we are just writing as user story 8. Okay, and user story 9. Okay, let me give another user story 10. Okay, so now you can see uh, whatever user stories I'm creating by selecting the user experience version, all these user stories will be like moved to this user experience version. Okay, so it means in this deadline, the deadline will be like July 31st. So before that, we need to work on the user stories that related to only user experience, and then we will release that version, and then we will work on next version. Okay, let me unselect this one. Now you can see the remaining user stories or the past user stories we have selected. Okay, so if you select and create user story, it will take you the version. Okay, and let's have sprint 2, and let me select all things together and move it to this sprint 2. Okay, and then start sprint. Okay, it is showing that so work items value don't have value for the estimation field. Okay, so here we didn't give estimated value or the story point, some of the values. So we need to give before we even start the sprint. Okay, so let's type that. Just a minute. Let me pull it back. Okay, and Let me add another user story, story 11, and then move it here. And now let's give 13. So, and it should be 3. And let's select. And sometimes the cursor won't take that value. Okay. So in this case, we will directly give the point here. It's okay. And it should be 3. And what else we are missing? We need this one, right? So let's 13. Right. Let me close this. And we didn't assign epic these values. So let's have assign few of the epics to them. Okay. And then let's start the sprint. Okay, right. Let's give the time and date, start the sprint. So now you can see all the user stories has been on the to-do list, and you can move it along this process. Okay. And let's move remaining user stories together. Okay. So just this is the way that people will be moving once the user story has been completed. Okay. So now let's leave it this sprint as it is. Friends, let's see the charts for our sprint 1. Okay. So here we will be having burn down, burn up, and velocity. You can see where is velocity. Yeah, velocity of the chart. Okay. So let's go for burn down chart. So let me change sprint 1 to sprint 2 to sprint 1. Let me remove this one. Okay. So the reason why it has showed that grade 1 is that, so actually what happens is that Sundays and remaining holidays that you have been selected will be showed as a grade options. Okay. So this black or this kind of shaded value will be given. So our entire sprint is on the Sunday itself, right? So that's why the entire sprint line has been uh, shaded out. Okay. So let's show, click on, select that show non-working days. Okay. And yeah, you can see sprint burn down chart will be look kind of this. So on the x-axis, you'll be having the timeline of the sprint. So for us, we have created July 20 in particular time to the end of the July 20 itself. Okay. And on the y-axis, you'll be having story points. So how many story points are there for that particular sprint can be seen here itself. Okay. So if you like select your like points of that story, sorry, points of that graph, you can see at what place what user story has been completed. Okay. So for clear breakdown, let's study this one. So remember, this is the ideal path. The gray line is the ideal path. So it will show like how the work has to be done in a sprint. So it will starting from the all the user stories. I think it is 11 total. Story points are 11. From 11 to it, we need to go back to 0. Okay. So sprint burndown is nothing but will show the remaining work of the sprint. So every time you move a single user story from the to do to the done, at that time the graph will be coming decreased by that story point. Okay. So let's say we have total 11 user stories, sorry, 11 story points worth of user story in a single sprint, this sprint one. So we have moved a story point, sorry, a user story worth of story points in our first interaction. Okay, so that's why the graph has been reduced to like this -3 value. Okay, you can see. So issue completed, a story point -3 happened, and you can see at what time and at what date also. So this straight lines is nothing but the time that taken for that particular user story to complete. Okay. So in the same manner, we have after this 3 user story has been completed, again we have moved one another user story worth of, let me see, worth of 5. So it has been dropped down here. Okay. And why this is gone back to, because as you remember that I have shifted one user story from done to progress one more time, right? So that's why the users, this line has been shifted back again, and then it is shifted down, and then and finally it goes to 0. Okay. So if you do any changes in this chart, okay, let me show you. So there is a reports option, right? So click on reports, go for product burndown chart. Sorry, sprint burndown chart. So this chart will appear once you do all the user stories from to do to done. Then only this chart gonna appear. Okay. So how to read this chart? So this chart, we are not looking into how like steep the chart is, how steep this red line is, but we will see what is the gap between the ideal line and this red line. Okay. So uh, let's say if an annotation is possible. Okay. Okay. Can you see the annotation that I'm giving in this chart? Team, can you see the annotation that I'm giving here? Yes. Okay. Right. So how to read this product burndown chart? So listen very carefully. I will show you how to read it. So I will explain difference between sprint burndown and product burndown in a minute. Before that, let's see this graph. Okay. So see, in most of the cases, sprint burndown chart won't be like this. So the reason why it is this simple, because we have shifted all the user stories in a single go from to do to done. So that's why it is easy to read. So actual the story, this sprint burndown chart in the real world will be something like, okay, and okay, let me move the end of the line. Let's say it moved here. Okay. We remove these things also. Okay. So how to read is that? Yeah, it is sprint burndown chart only. Okay. Yeah. So what happened is that you will see the gap or the difference between the ideal line and the line you got by moving the user stories. And based on this gap, you will describe whether the sprint will whether the sprint is done correctly, or we have overestimated or underestimated our team. Okay. So what happened is that, so this is the ideal line that Jira has provided to you for that particular user stories. Okay. So both we will start our sprint the same starting point. Just a minute. Yeah. Same starting point. And whenever the sprint line has been moved away from the ideal line, it means that like uh, we are away from the ideal line. Okay, we are not in the correct lane compared to the ideal line. Okay, so it's like let's take an example. You have 10 questions to complete in a 1 hour. Okay, and you set your timer that in within half an hour I will complete 5 questions. Okay, so once the half an hour is completed, you still not completed the 5 questions, but you completed only 2 questions. So it means you are away from the line you have set it. So in that case, what happens is that the graph will be move away from the ideal line. Okay, so the gap will be increased if you are late or if you are being delayed of your sprint. Okay. So when the graph will be come down the ideal lane, because uh, come down is that when you set your time for 5 questions in half an hour, right? And you completed 8 questions at the same half an hour, then the graph will be decreased below the ideal line. Okay. So these two gaps will be describe how our sprint uh, went well. Okay. So if you got lots of gaps, the sprint is higher the ideal line, it means you have overestimated the user stories or the story points, and sorry, you have underestimated the story points, and then you have start your sprint. Okay. If your graph is below the ideal line, it means you have overestimated the story points, and you have completed the story points before the ideal line. Okay. So yeah, it's like let's say you think that 5 story points will be, sorry, 5 user stories worth of 20 story points will be very enough to complete in a single sprint. And once the sprint is completed, and the scrum master will look into the graph, and if we see that all your sprint graph is below the line like this, it means you have underestimated uh, your worth or your work. Okay, or you are overestimated the user stories and its points, thinking that it is very complicated to work on, but in reality you have completed them before the ideal line. If your sprint burn down chart is somewhat higher than this ideal line like this, and somewhere else you have completed this user story, it means you have underestimated these story points, thinking that it is very easy to complete in a single sprint. But while you are implementing, you will find out that it is very hard to complete the user stories in a sprint. Okay. So in this way, by the gap between the ideal line to the original line, you can say whether the sprint is gone correct or not. Okay. So did you get the idea how to read the sprint, how to read the sprint burn down chart, team? Right. Okay, fine. Yeah, I will explain one more time about overestimation and underestimation. Okay, before that, let me see any other doubts. No, right. See, overestimation, right? So, overestimation is like while you are creating sprint or you are moving user items to the sprint backlog, you are overestimated that these user items are very hard to work with. So that's why I have taken very few user stories. Okay. And once the sprint is completed and you got your sprint burndown chart, your graph will be look like below the ideal line. Means you have overestimated your user stories complexity, thinking that it is very difficult, but in real situation, you have completed them in easy, completed very easily. Okay. So that is overestimation. And underestimation is that you think that user stories are very easy to implement and you move all the user stories in a single sprint. And now you are seeing the difficulty of that user story to implement. So then what happens is that the graph will be always away from the ideal line and somewhere else you may complete one or two user stories that the graph will be decreasing. Okay. So if you move any user stories from the to do to done, then that how much worth of user story you have moved, that much length that user story this line will be decreased. Let's say I have moved 5 story points of user story, then the gap will be 5 minus 5. You can see that 8 to 5 will be 3. It will be moved to 3. Okay, so from here you go. So this is how this sprint burndown charts will be read. Okay, and yeah, we might get an issue like what happened if we overestimate or underestimate. We still working or we still completing our sprint with no issues, right? So what happens is that the sprints will be decided for before the project has been started. So let's say the project timeline is 2 3 years. Okay, you have think that like 10 or 14 sprints are enough for this project. So what happens in each time you have overestimating your sprint is that you are completing your sprint, but at the same time, the amount of user stories you are completing very low for that particular sprint. Okay. And if you are overestimated, uh, sorry, if you are underestimated every user story, it means you are taking lots of time to complete few user stories. And one more thing is that some of the sprints. Okay, let me review this. Yeah. Some of the sprint burndown charts will be look like this. It will stop here itself. So this will happen when the sprint has been stopped in between or when the people forgot to move from user stories from to do to done, or when we overestimated ourselves and underestimate the complexity of the user stories and we are unable to complete the user stories in that particular sprint. At that time, the sprint chart will be stopped directly or in between. Okay, so that's why we should have a clear complexity values with discussing about, between everyone, and then we have to move them to this sprint, right? And see, in prep 2, we will be asking you to create sprint burndown charts and product burndown charts, right? But as a free version of Jira, there is no product burndown chart. So just take a screenshot of sprint burndown chart and the backlog if it was Jira, and then paste it in the sprint. Okay. And yeah, coming to difference between sprint burndown and product burndown chart. So the only difference is that, let me delete this thing. Okay. Only difference is that here, this is a single sprint, right? And the time period of this sprint is, I think, maybe 24 hours or something like that. Okay. So you can see the time period under the x-axis for that single sprint. What happens in the product burndown chart is that you will be seeing the time period across the all the sprints. Okay. So it will be here, it may be sprint 1, here it will be sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, until you all these sprints has been completed, maybe sprint 20. Okay. So product burndown chart will show us the remaining work across the all the sprints or across the all the user stories that we have to complete. Okay. Let me clear this. Okay. Did you get the idea between sprint burndown and product burndown? Team? Okay. Right. So at the bottom, you can see like in the tabular form, how our user stories has been completed. So you can see at what time and at what date, how many user stories has been started for this sprint, and at what time, which user story has been completed. You can see all these things under the sprint burndown chart. It's okay. Let's go back to our board. Okay. So we are still not move everything to this sprint done stage. So let's see how that user story will, how that report will look like. Okay. Burndown chart, sprint one to sprint two. So now you have seen that we have started with 58 story points of a sprint 2, but we didn't move any one of it is to the done stage. So that's why it is in a straight line. Okay, if you move any one of the story point is done, then will the graph will be come down to this x-axis. Okay, and burn up chart. Let's have a look at burn up chart. We will have sprint 1 because that is the completed one, right? Right. So burn up chart is a quite opposite to burn down chart. Okay. So let me minimize this one so that you can see the red line and the green line together. Okay. So burn up chart is nothing but no product burn down chart is not available. Okay. We don't have premium version for that. So we can't see here in the demo session. Yeah. Coming to this product burn down chart or sorry, product burn up chart. Sorry. So burn up chart is quite opposite to the burn down chart. In burn down chart, you will be seeing remaining work. Okay. In burn up chart, you will be seeing completed work. Okay. And the graph also in burn down chart, the graph will be uh, like moving down across to the x-axis. Okay. So whenever you have completed a user story, that worth of story points will be reduced in the burn down chart. In burn up chart, when you completed a user story, that worth of user story story points will be increased in the burn up chart. As you can see, uh, from until 12:27, we didn't move any user stories to the done stage. So that's why we have a flat line here. And then at 12:27, we have moved a user story worth of 3. Okay. So now the what we say the line has been shifted upwards to the uh, y-axis with 3 user stories gap. So 3 story points gap. Okay. So in the same manner, it will keep on increasing until it reaches the top line, which is the the sum of the story points that we have in this user sprint. So the sum of the story points we have is like, let me see. Mhm. Yeah, we have total 11 story points in a single sprint. So each time you move any one of the user stories to done, the graph will be increasing towards the final amount of the story points. Okay. So it's nothing but it want to reaches to the final height. It means once it is reached there, then all the stories points has been done. Okay. So this is how you read your burn up chart. So you can see that here there is a like drop in this burn up chart because we have moved a single user story from burn done to progress. So that's why it has been shifted back drop. Okay. And coming to reports again. You can see this sprint report. Okay, let me. Okay, you can see the entire sprint report is nothing but a sprint burndown chart only, but you'll be seeing with all the user stories that has been completed and their status, priorities, everything can be seen here. And finally, we have velocity of the team or velocity chart. Okay. Okay. So velocity of chart is nothing but velocity of a team will be shown in this velocity of chart. So it is nothing but the efficiency of our team to complete the user stories in a single sprint. Okay. Let's say our team has completed, so sorry, in sprint planning meeting, let's say our team said that we will complete 100 story points worth of user stories in a single sprint. Okay, and they moved that user stories worth of 100 story points into the sprint. And once the sprint is completed, they have completed 90 story points worth of user stories. Okay, so now we will get the that efficiency here. So on the gray bar, you can see the commitment, how much they committed for that sprint, and the green bar you can see the completed. Okay, so by this you can see like what how much they committed and how well they can complete their committed value. So by looking into completed value, we can estimate in the next sprint whether our team can complete that new story points well or not. Okay, let's say in the sprint one, they said that they will complete 100 story points, but in they completed only 90 story points. And when you are assigning sprint two, as a scrum master, you will look into the chart and think that, okay, our team can only complete 90 story points in a single sprint. So this time you will think of it like, let's give them 90 or 92, 95 worth of story points in the next sprint. So it will helpful us to plan our next sprint so that we don't blindly assign all these story points across all the sprints to the people. Okay, so this is how you will read your velocity of the team. Okay, right. So this is the whole sequence how you have to work with your Jira. So you will be creating epics, user stories. Under user story, if you need, you can create subtasks, bugs, and move them to the sprint. Start the sprint, complete the sprint, find the report, and then understand the sprint burn down on burn up charts. Okay. So that's all.